I'm just entering early. I want to make sure I have the sound check. So if you're out there watching, if you could tell me, can you hear me? Because I wasn't quite sure if my wireless mic was working. If you can just pop in the chat and tell me you can hear me, that'd be awesome. Okay, well, it's time to get started. So I just want to make sure as soon as my viewers come in, if you could just let me know you can hear me. This is my first episode today, and so I'm not as adept moving around YouTube. And there was something in the mic when I was checking it, so I wasn't quite sure if it was going to pick up my wireless mic or not. So if you can just pop in the chat and let me know if you can hear me, that would be awesome. Test 1 2 1 2. It looks like it's registering. I'm seeing it register. So I'm going to just check one more thing before I get started. Okay. Okay. Thank you for your patience. I wasn't able to see the chat. I see everybody is telling me loud and clear, so I'm ready for takeoff. Thank you so much for your patience and your support. It means the world to me. So here we go. Welcome to the Healing Inquiry. So my purpose is to share spirit and science and be a fellow traveler on the healing experience. And when I say spirit, I mean in that true sense of inspiration, intuition, and tuning into listening to our bodies. And that's what has really emerged for me on this journey. I'm going to share my journey with you in hopes that it will inspire you to go deeper into that self-learning, self-healing journey that you are on and we are all on. I'm going to talk about the therapies and I believe they're not just specific to my journey. These are therapies that can encompass all learning experiences. When we look, and my background is Ayurveda, I'm a Clinical Ayurvedic Specialist, but I'm not speaking to you in that expertise sense. That's what I've used to help kind of ground and form my treatment plan. But, and I just want you to know that's the lens that I primarily look through, but I'm also bringing in many, many different modalities that I've been learning from this journey. And so when we look at Ayurveda, we look at the 10 pairs of opposites, and that's how we notice that there are imbalances that are emerging. And those imbalances show up in symptoms and in disease manifestations. And so just, as an example, 10 pairs of opposites, when I say that, it's looking at hot and cold, how much heat or how much coldness is in your body and your environment, or dry and moist. How much are you feeling dryness in the body, around the body, in the environment, or moisture too much swelling in the body or too much moisture in the environment, movement and stillness, too much movement, not enough stillness, not enough movement, etc. So that's the lens that Ayurveda looks at, and that's how I looked at it. And whatever modalities I've been bringing in, how were they balancing those 10 pairs of opposites within the symptoms that I've been experiencing? So go ahead and enter questions in the chat as we go. I have my eyes on the chat, so if something comes up, and someone said I'm frozen, but I think that was earlier because I had popped out. So I hope you can see me clearly and hear me clearly now. If there's anything that's come back, okay. So let me tell you about, I want to share with you the history, and then I'll get into the modalities as we go along. This is just going to be 15 to 20 minutes each time because I want it to be compact and digestible information and sharing and learning together as community. Again, I am sharing in this experience of healing that we're all experiencing, and I want to share my experience in that way that it inspires with whatever you're experiencing. I'm not coming from the lens of being the expert here, just in the expert of what my experience is to share. So I would say in the fall of 2023, I noticed a lump in my left breast. And when I noticed it, I had noticed like my left nipple had kind of inverted, and I thought maybe it was just from the steam, the steam bath that I was experiencing. And I go, let me check that a little deeper. And I noticed a lump, and I said, well, that feels similar. It feels like a lipoma. And in my experience, I'd had, let's say, I think 6 to 7 lipomas. Lipomas are fatty tumors, and this was in my family. My father had it, my grandmother had had it. It wasn't anything that was severe. It's mostly if you just leave them alone, but really, the wisdom is there something going on in the body that you should be changing and shifting. But in the 25 years that I'd had them, they were there. And so it kind of felt similar to that. And I thought, okay, maybe this is just a lipoma that's developing there. It was hard, and it had kind of like a corner to it, like a cartilagey type feel to it. And so I kind of left it there. I said, okay, I'm doing my Ayurvedic practices. I'm going to bring in some little more hot heat herbs, do those kinds of things, but I'm not going to give it front and center stage. My pitta mind was focused. I was developing my clinical practice. I was moving into co-hosting and developing, being a Airbnb in real estate. And then moving, I was also transitioning and moving from Northern California. So my pitta mind was really focused on that. And I said, okay, I can't really give my health center stage. I'm okay. And it had a kapha nature to it. So there was an itchiness. When there's growth happening, you'll feel one of the signs can be an itchiness. So there was no pain, there was no tenderness. And that really lends itself to, in a kapha imbalance, of ignoring something, because you can kind of ignore those things. There's not pain presenting itself. There's nothing kind of pushing me to do anything. And that's where kapha imbalances are. They're not going to move or do anything until, a fire has been lit under them, where it's impending. So I ignored that, and I continued to do my practices. I'm feeling, physically great. My energy was great. So I thought, when I look back at now and I compare my energy to then, no comparison. My energy right now is through the roof. And then I could see where there was kind of dips and dives. So I continued to, continue to build my life, move, transition, travel, and kind of put it on the back burner. And then I believe in July or August of 2024, I felt it kind of increasing in size. And it came a little bit more on my radar. So I reached out to my gynecologist, because that's who I first thought was, but that was who was in Southern California. And I was relocated to Albuquerque, New Mexico at the time. And he'd been my gynecologist for 25 years. And he said, yes, I definitely want you to come in, because there had been no signs of anything like that before. And he said, right away, he got me scheduled for a mammogram and all of this kind of thing. And I was weighing back and forth. I had just settled myself in Albuquerque. I was starting a new a job. I was starting a new relationship. I was settling in, and I did not want to bring my focus and travel and do that, because I thought if I do that, then suddenly my focus is going to be off. So that was my thinking. And I said, okay, look, I thought to myself, I don't want to take, the extra time and money that it's going to take for me to travel to Southern California and do that. So I stayed where I was. I continued to do, my health practices that I was doing. I thought it's not getting any worse. I'll just keep, kind of, again, not on the front burner. It was on the back burner, and continue to develop my life here, because I'm feeling very happy about, starting my new life in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I would transition and get a primary health care practitioner in Albuquerque. That takes some time. When, I went from my practitioner that I'd had for 25 years, who he could get me in immediately, to kind of reestablishing and, going through the hoops and the systems and, the this and the that referral. And so it wasn't until March of 2025 when I finally had a healthcare practitioner that I could go in and schedule an appointment. But at that time, it already presented in my life that I needed to transition and move back to my home in Illinois. So I went ahead and went about that. And in that time, I was still in my life not bringing that aspect of my health on the front. I was kind of just doing all the things my Pitta mind was doing to organize and plan, but not putting my own messages I was getting from my body on the front. I said, okay, I'm going to continue doing my practices, but there are other things that I could be doing that I just wasn't paying attention to. And I'm going to talk about those other things that that emerged very clearly once I got the message, once my kappa energy was lit on fire. So I transitioned to Illinois, and I got on the healthcare plan. And again, it takes time. So I didn't get an appointment until September of 2025. And in that interim, let's say that all of 2025 up until September 2025, emotional things come up. And I'm going to talk about how, it's not just physicality, it's not just mental, there's emotions that are stuck, energy. And so I was transitioning through releasing a relationship. I was transitioning through my longtime animal companion had passed. So emotional things were coming up. And to soothe that, commonly what a kapha energy will do is to sit in stillness, eat heavier, warmer, sweeter foods. So I was doing all those things, and it was calming my nervous system, but it was also creating the environment to grow the tumors. So there, and I'll get to that point, whether it's one tumor or multiple tumors that was, coming up. But I was, and in all of this process, the doing, the not doing, the ignoring, I was creating the environment for my body to manifest the tumors in my breast. And so with that same energy and that same knowledge and understanding of, we have the ability to create, we also have the ability to change and transform. And so that's what the impetus for the path that I'm on now that I'm going to share with you. So we come to September 18, 2025. I have the mammogram appointment. I go in, I do that. And in the appointment, they take me from the mammogram to the sonogram. The radiologist, I think that's the correct term, suddenly there's 3 or 4 or 5 people in the room. And this is taking a very long time. And then by the end of it, she's like, well, it looks like 3 masses and, And there's some nervousness, they have nervousness or shakiness when they're giving me the paperwork. So I know that in their perspective, they're seeing like, wow, she has waited way long before we would, what we would like to happen. And so within a day, I get their diagnosis. They have the mass size and, all of those terms that push fear into your nervous system. That, and she wants the biopsy done immediately, like within 2 days, she wants the biopsy. And so at that point, already when I left there, I kind of already knew I didn't need to see the thing that they had told me. I already knew, how they were feeling about it. So my mode immediately, I go, okay, I have the herbs at home. I know the formula to mix. Let me mix my herb formula. In Ayurveda, we call it lekana, or, if you want to translate that, it's basically tumor scraping, tumor dissolving, tumor destroying herbs. So I mix that together. I immediately put myself on a mono diet, all sugars out. Those are the immediate things I do. My pitta mind kicked in because a fire had been lit under my kapha stillness, my kapha ignoring, my kapha tendency just to sit there and not do anything. And so the pitta mind took over. And I don't feel it was a pitta mind in a way of driving. I think it was the pitta mind that I needed and the clarity that I needed. And not to be in that shock and fear mode, which I wasn't. I was kind of just trying to orient myself. And I immediately called a friend of mine. Maybe she's on the call today, Tina Thornton. She's a longtime dear friend, nutritionist, healer, many, many things. And I knew she had worked with something called the light wave therapy X39 patch. And she had been sending me these things because a year previous, I had mentioned to her the lump, and she says, hey, you really should try this. And so it was kind of in my consciousness and thinking about it and paying attention. And she has calls weekly to tune into the doctors. And so she turned me onto that. And then she directed me and referred me to Dr. Jeffrey Hubbard, who is an MD, but he also integrates alternative medicines. And so I contacted him, looked at his website, see if I can get an appointment with him. And so I began pulling in my friends, my family who were supportive, the therapies that I had known about. And so this light wave, this stem cell patch therapy, didn't know anything about it. So this is something new that I've learned. And I'll go deeper as we go in episodes. I'm going to take each one of the modalities that I do. I'm going to dive deeper into it, bring in the science, bring in my experience. And if, those experts who have pointed me in that direction and been a part of the treatment will come in and talk about it. I totally love that. I immediately contacted my Ayurvedic mentor, Dr. Mary Alice Quinn, and maybe she's on the call listening. I called in all the people who've been so supportive of me to do this because I was a little nervous about it. So Dr. Mary Alice Quinn, she was a mentor to me when I was doing my academic studies and my internships through the California College of Ayurveda, and worked with me, several years. I knew immediately she was the one to contact to bring it in, because I had already started coming up with my Ayurvedic treatment plan. I needed people to come in and look at it and go, okay, let's fine tune it. And then I needed other modalities, which Dr. Jeffrey Hubbard offered, to come in and bring in what where the missing pieces were, what I could bring in and work with. I also thought of cabbage on the breast. My longtime friend, and I know she's on the call here, Sabini Sayan. She is a nutritionist, food energetics, many, many more things. And I remember being in one of her classes, and she talked about cabbage and the way food is designed and how it supports the body. And so I immediately started wearing cabbage leaves on the breasts. And again, I'll talk to more about the science of that. I'm not going to go into that today, but there is science in not just it's a cooling effect on the skin, but actually how the elements of the cabbage soak into the breast and how it supports the breast tissue. And I'm kind of talking about in my mind of how I was coming up with things. And the other thing immediately I did was I stopped wearing a bra. And I remember, and my sister, who's she's a Pilates expert. She has a Pilates studio in in Seattle, Washington, and she had, kind of said this. And I said this when I was in the mammogram. I said, I've been wearing this very, very tight sports bra for a very long time. So my Ayurvedic lens said, okay, when you compress something, when you have stillness and there's no movement, there's no flow, there's no circulation, you're creating the environment for it to grow. Now, I have large breasts my whole life, since, 13. And so that tendency to hide them, keep them in, I couldn't do sports unless I had them very tightly bound. And that, and again, there's a lot of science behind it, but when I mentioned that to the radiologist, goes, well, I don't think I've ever heard of anything about lots of people wear sports bras, and I've never heard anything that they've caused, any kind of tumors. Now, I'm not saying they caused it, and none of those things I'm saying caused it. It creates the conditions, the environment for it to grow. It's just like, you put it in the sun, you add water, you fertilize, whatever the things you do to bring a seed to grow. These were the things that I was bringing into my life that were creating the environment for this tumor to grow. So then I met Dr. Hubbard, met with him, and he pointed me in the direction of electric medicine technology, and introduced someone who was his longtime associate and colleague. And she's not a doctor, but she's a reflexology therapist, Susan Martin. And she was actually in Springfield, Illinois, which is an hour away from my home. And so she has long time practiced with Ed Skilling Institute, which I think is in Arizona, or started out in Arizona, and she'd been practicing with him for over 30 years. And then she had her own practice in Illinois, but she had an electric medicine technology. And I went and met her, and I rented one of the machines, and I've been working with that. And then finally, biofield tuning. So my very dear best friend, Pam Newman, she is studied in biofield tuning with tuning forks. And so I kind of mentioned, emotionality. So not just the physicality of what we do, but emotions, the emotions that are carried through your lifetime, previous lifetime, ancestral, get stuck energy. Now this tumor has developed on the left side of my breast. Left side is the flow of the feminine energy. And so there's a lot of very long science about that. So biofield tuning and then biogeometry is kind of brought itself into another modality that I use. Just going to check the chat, see if anybody's commented questions. That's a lot. It's a lot. And so in all of those major things that I've mentioned that I brought into my treatment plan, with Ayurveda, I practice panchakarma therapy, which is seasonal deep cleansing. So it's a mono diet, and then working with different herbs, and we call it oilation. So oil on the body, within the body, medicated oil, and that's, changing the season. So I did that at the end of September. I'll be coming up and doing another one at the end of March, transitioning into spring. Dry brushing daily. Dr. Mary Alice Quinn brought that into me. I knew this Ayurvedically, but it wasn't something I had in my practice. And I would say that has something that has hugely changed. And many of these things I will be doing for the rest of this lifetime because of how it balances, nourishes the body. And that's the whole thing. It's all about balancing, nourishing, and purifying the body. When we do that on a regular basis, when we support our body to do what it's designed to do, health and wellness come back into being. And we don't have to move into fear that we have to cut something out, or we have to immediately eradicate. We have, the body takes time. The mind is pretty quick. The emotions, they kind of ebb and flow, but the body takes time and patience. That's something that I am learning. I'm on the Gene Keys path, the golden path with Richard Rudd, and it's just married right into my healing journey. And one of the things I'm learning is what patience really is. Patience is not waiting and being patient for something to happen that you're wishing for. And I have to say this every day to myself, patience is nourished while waiting and in becoming. And so that's what's happening. This, the Ayurvedic lens is, I'm transforming this body. So I'm giving it the environment for it to heal itself, for it to transform and dissolve the tumors, and for it to come into health, it's, strong health and vitality. And that's true with any health condition that we're dealing with. And I know that from a practitioner point of view, and now I'm knowing it from the healing traveler point of view. I'm in that healing journey. The other thing that I do that I'm going to talk about more deeply in an episode is castor oil packs, how the medicine of castor oil, herbal therapies and dosages. This is not just, drinking, an herbal tea, but it's the high levels of dosages and food as medicine and cold plunging therapies. And so all of those things, not to mention movement, exercise, and getting out in nature. And my foundation, I think what has really helped me to just, immediately kind of transition is that my foundation in yoga and meditation. Those of you who know me know that I'm a Kundalini yoga and meditation teacher for over 20 years and practitioner. So that daily practice, it's the mind that is the driver in creating whatever spaces we're creating. And so when we have that daily practice of meditation to really moving our mind out of those lower frequencies of fear, overwhelm, worry, anger, frustration, those lower level frequency emotions, and we can use through breath, use through meditation to raise the frequency. Our cells are operated on frequency. So we're changing the frequency of the whole body. So it comes down to, in my experience, my belief is that we're always confronted with two choices. Are we going to make a choice that brings us into more pain and suffering? Sometimes we do. And that's obviously I see my choices there. Are we going to make a choice that leads us to love? And really learning, I've had to really learn to fall in love with this body, give this body love and attention and not ignore it. And my body is responding and talking to me, and I can hear it, I can feel it. When I come up with, should I do this or that? And tuning into the body gives you signals. And the body was giving me signals all along, I just wasn't paying attention. And suddenly it has to hit you over the head and say, okay, this is what's presented. You have this tumor growth and what are you going to do with this? If you continue to ignoring it, the path in the future don't look too bright. So I can say I'm going into 6 months since September 18th of 2025 of the practices and this healing journey of really, really putting my health and body right front with, love. And the tumors have changed in consistency. I think it's kind of it's kind of a weird shape. One is kind of like an egg shape of the size of the, kind of like this. The other one, the one that I said was hard, it was kind of like the spread of these 3 fingers, and now it's kind of the point of one of my fingers. And it's not hard, it's the softness, and there's this movement from one side, all kinds of different shifts and changes. And there's been points where I'm like, is something happening? Is something changing? I don't want to be doing all of the things I'm doing forever. I kind of want to get about the business of, other things in my life. And again, I come back to that patience. Patience is being nourished while waiting and in becoming. So I'm in becoming. And so continue being nourished and learning and growing. I've gone to 30 minutes, so apologies for that. I want to invite you back for the next episode. I will be here every Friday, the same time. I'm going to look at the comments as the future goes on. I'm going to focus on each one of the modalities that I'm learning. And so it'll be condensed in that way that I'm practicing. I'm going to look at your comments. If there's questions, if there's something that's emerging, I want to form an episode around your questions. I want to make this an interactive. Like, I want to learn just as much from you, because maybe there's some expertise or some experience that you have that I don't know, and I want to bring that in and learn more. So I want to share my experience. I want to learn from, maybe experiences you have. So please post comments or questions. I will respond to every single one. And I just want to end by saying, check in with your body and your spirit today. Listen, be aware, and I'll see you next Friday. Thank you for supporting me, tuning in. So appreciate you.